glad you're here. Hey, Deborah Lucas. I hope that your art is going really, really well. Deborah is a really talented watercolor artist as well, and is designing her own book cover, but in a way that's like so specific and so unique to her. I really, really love what she's doing. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad you're here. I'm just going to keep letting people in for one more minute here. If you're just chiming in, please go ahead and drop in the chat. Where are you coming in from and what are you currently working on?
It's my 2 o'clock, set this for 45 minutes.
So glad to have you. And I am hitting the mute all button as people come in. Let me do that again. Awesome. And here we have some more. Okay, so I am going to welcome everybody and say hello. We do have our closed captions on. So if you want to watch this meeting with the closed captions on, please feel free to go into your 3 dots labeled more and select captions, and you'll be able to select that you watch and see the closed captions as we go. If you're watching the replay on Loom, over on the side, there is a transcript of this entire meeting, and you'll be able to click on that transcript to navigate back and forth through the replay for whatever you want to see or hear or listen again or skip ahead on. If you're just joining, please go ahead and drop in the chat. What are you currently working on and where are you coming in from? And let's dive into our Writer's Bridge today. So we have all heard it. You got to go to a conference. You got to hire an editor. You need a publicist. You need a virtual assistant. You got to do all this stuff, and it all costs money. But most of us don't have big bucks. Most of us don't have personal assistants. And a lot of us have other commitments like children, family, caretaking, pets. So what is a thrifty writer to do? And this episode, we're going to talk about all the ways that you can revise, edit, publish, and share your work without spending a fortune. Now, I'm going to introduce our guests in just a moment. I'll let you know we are missing our co-host Charlotte today due to a dental emergency, but we do have Alfie, who is here with us as our tech wizard and who will be keeping an eye out for questions in the chat. You can add your reactions to questions. You're welcome to answer other people's questions in the chat. Please don't use the question mark icon, because I will use that to note which comments are questions so that I can scroll back and easily see those. And feel free to drop your questions in there as you think of them. If you are watching the replay, feel free to drop your questions in the replay comments, because we do check those and answer them whenever we can. Before I introduce our guests, I want to remind everybody we have a Craft Talks webinar tomorrow with Lindsay Deloach-Jones, Revive Your Creativity, the energizing art of playful writing. And you might have seen Lindsay's blog, Toward the Walrus, on the Brevity blog this morning, all about how finding play in your writing is not just an exercise. Sometimes it is, in fact, the whole point. I'll also let you know that I have a virtual intensive coming up that is a 5-day online event, September 10th through 14th. I'm co-teaching it with Dinty W. Moore. It's called Rebirth Your Writing, Memoir, Large and Small. And that's September 10th to 14th, with craft classes, publishing seminars, and more, all focused on memoir. It's like a miniature writing conference with a real sense of community, as well as specific writing techniques and insider publishing information. So, our guests. Wendy H. Jones is the multi-award-winning, best-selling international author of adult crime fiction, adult cozy mysteries, young adult mysteries, children's picture books, and the award-winning Writing Matters series of books for writers. She also created the Authorpreneur Accelerator Academy, guiding authors in all aspects of the writing and publishing business. Wendy has also served as president of the Scottish Association of Writers and runs the thriving Facebook community, Women Writers, Editors, Agents, and Publishers. Shannon Luders-Manuel, our other guest, is the author of the upcoming memoir, Black Prince, a father-daughter story in black and white, forthcoming in summer 2024 from Lawrence Hill Books and the Chicago Review Press. She has an MA in literature from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and has been published in the New York Times, the LA Review of Books, and the Offing, among others. She lives in LA, where she works as a sensitivity reader and a DEI content reviewer for both publishers and individuals. Welcome, Wendy and Shannon. We are so glad you're here. Did I leave anything out that's really important to say about you?
Well, one thing for me, my publishing date is now 2025.
Isn't that always the way? Like
Yeah.
publishing just moves so slow, so
Uh-huh.
slow.
I would
Yeah.
also like to say I've recently set up two more strings to my bow, so to speak. I'm now one of the founding partners of Oscott Publishing and Retreats, and I've also started a free writing magazine for writers called Writer's Narrative. And I'll pop the link for Writer's Narrative in the chat so that people, if they want to, can click and they can sign up, and it's completely free. And people can also pitch to me.
And we will also put that in our follow-up email that everybody's going to get to, as well as the links to your website. And Alfie has also dropped them in the chat. So, Wendy, you know a lot of writers. You've worked with a lot of writers. Shannon, you know a lot of writers. You've worked with a lot of writers. I myself, as a freelance editor, have worked with an awful lot of writers. What do you see authors either paying for or being told they have to pay for, or having people try to sell them, that is just completely outrageous? You cannot believe that people are trying to pawn this stuff off on authors.
Well, I'm happy to start if you would like me to. The biggest thing I found, I know, well, I don't know them personally, but I know of someone, and it was them that said it. They paid nearly £30,000 to Austen Macaulay to publish their book, and the finished product was dire, and I mean dire. It was not fit for purpose. They didn't get anything they paid for. They didn't get marketing, nothing. And it was just, I mean, I'm not getting into the ins and outs of publishers, supported publishing, because I know there are some very good supported publishing businesses out there. I'm talking about the true vanity publishers who take thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds worth of, or that's even bigger in dollars, money from authors in order to publish them. And the finished product isn't fit for purpose at all.
Exactly. Books that are riddled with typos and errors. The cover design looks like crap. Now, there is a valid path called hybrid publishing where the author does pay to be published. But the difference between vanity and hybrid is that with hybrid publishing, they are upfront about you are purchasing a package of publishing services, and you will expect those services to be of a certain quality. Vanity presses very often approach authors with the idea of, oh, we're a publishing company. You just have to also invest in your book with us. And do remember, though, everybody, even with hybrid presses, the publisher who charges you money always makes their money from your check. It does not matter if they use words like royalty or partnership. They make their money from your check because they are selling you a package of publishing services. That's not bad or wrong. There are some very good hybrid presses out there, but do know that you are purchasing a service and you have the right to demand a certain level of quality on that. Shannon, what do you see that people are getting asked to pay for, or they think they have to pay for, and it's just not needed? It's just not necessary.
It's a little hard for me to say, just because, I have so many close friends in the writing industry, and they all pay for various things. And I myself don't pay for things because I don't have the money to. If I did, I don't know what I would pay for. But I would say, just if the cost, sorry, my cat, if the cost isn't worth what you're getting, you know what I mean? Like paying thousands and thousands of dollars for a book proposal, or or like a, you know what I mean? Just if it seemed like an exorbitant amount for what you're getting in return.
And we went through a fad a few years ago. I haven't seen as many of them anymore, but people used to do a book trailer where it was like a sort of music video that was like the moods and the themes and the premise of your book. And, you and all your friends would watch it. And I got to say, in terms of, oh, look, I have something to show on social media to talk about my book that is not just, hey, buy my book. Great. But people were spending, $5,000-$6,000 on these 2-minute videos, which is not really going to help your writing career all that much.
I've seen those even recently with
Yeah.
people.
Are they still happening?
Yeah, they are.
I think a lot of people now, though, and rather than paying a lot of money to do them, are doing them themselves, like on TikTok, or they're doing them themselves on Canva, or even BookBrush, if people have heard of BookBrush. I'm happy to talk about BookBrush later if you want me to, but you can make the most fabulous trailers on BookBrush now, and it's minimum cost. It's just the cost of buying BookBrush for a year.
Nice. And we'll take a look for that and drop it into the chat when we find it. So let me ask you, Shannon, you very proudly spent $0 on your publishing process, but you're also a smart, savvy writer. So I'm pretty sure that when you sent your book to your publisher, it was not the first person who was looking at your book and giving feedback. How did you get feedback, and what kind of feedback did you get, and why did it cost $0?
Well, I became friends with other writers and writers that I admire, and we would critique each other's work. I also did that with my book proposal. I think it was we were both working on book proposals, so we swapped, and gave each other feedback. Also, I looked at other people's book proposals to help me figure out how to do mine. Spend a lot of time, but it helps you too to spend a lot of time, because it helps you figure out exactly what you want to say. I will say, so I did do some paid groups, very small, because I didn't have the money to do it. But I did, when I was first starting out writing my book, I took a class by Jennifer Lauk, who wrote Blackbird and Still Waters. So it was a very cost-effective, and I only could do it for one time, but that was extremely helpful. And then also I did do like one class here in LA that was both of them were the same, where you basically just, the writer guides you and there's exercises, and then you submit work and each other critiques them, and then the author critiques them. And I see that as the most helpful thing. So those were both in the past, when I was first starting out. And then I just read a lot, spent a lot of time revising myself. And I do have to say too that I'm an editor, so that gives me a leg up, because I don't need to hire an editor for like line editing, because I do that myself. So yeah, I could talk. I don't know how much you want me to say right off the bat, but
I'm going to pop it over to Wendy. Wendy,
okay.
What services help you put together the best book you can put together without actually spending money?
Well, I mean, again, I'm self-published and traditionally published, so I have two strings to my bow. My traditionally published books, I spend $0 on, because the publisher does it all. They find their children's books, and they find the illustrators, and they do the covers, and they do everything. But with my independently published books, when I first started out, I made a decision to go independently published. That was my decision. And I have a friend who's an editor, and I'm an editor, so we both edit each other's work. Although I have to say, I think I'm getting the better end of the deal of it, because I write a lot more than she does. So I kind of do one book every 3 years for her, and she gets about 3 a year for me. But she doesn't seem to mind, so that's fine. So that keeps the editing costs down. I'm in 3 writers groups, so I've got people who will critique it for me, who will be alpha readers. I know we all know about beta readers, but the alpha readers is where you get your peers, other authors to read it through, so they will pick up things as well. And then in terms of the cover design, I hired a cover designer, the most phenomenal cover designer who just gets what I do. Even though I'm from Scotland, just in case nobody could guess, I'm actually from Scotland, where I normally live. I'm in Virginia at the moment in the USA because I'm on a 3-month book tour. But she's in North Carolina, my cover designer, and she's amazing. She captures everything I want. So I pay her. Sorry, I'm outside. And there's an ambulance going past, or
Can't hear it at all. You're good.
That's okay. I'm
Is
glad
it making that fun, like British ambulance sound, like dee doo dee doo? Yeah,
it's making the American version. I'm not in Britain. I'm in Virginia, so it's the
okay.
American. So it's yes, I hire a cover designer and I pay her because she is worth what I pay her. Now, I'm really lucky because I get a phenomenal deal with my cover designer because I do all my covers through her. So we're really, really lucky to get such a good, I'm really, really lucky to get such a good deal on my covers. And I would always stick to her anyway because she is so good. And I recommend her to everybody. She doesn't take everyone on, but usually if I recommend, they will take her on. And then I've got beta readers, people who will read my books. And so that keeps the cost down. And a lot of it, as Shannon was saying, is networking and getting to know people. Getting to know people and being nice to them and helping them. They're always willing to be nice and help you back. And it's always a good way of doing it. So
I call that making deposits in the bank of goodwill.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we need to remember as writers is that, you know, we get to the end of the manuscript and we think, oh, great, now I need to enlist some helpers. Who am I going to get? What we need to be doing the whole time we are writing is volunteering to read other people's work, forming the writing group we need, because you want to make it so that by the time you get to the end of your manuscript, you already have 2 or 3 people where you gave them great feedback. And so you don't feel bad at all about asking them for the favor of reading your book because you already did something nice for them and they're going to do a nice job for you as well. It's really important to start giving to your literary community and start making your literary community while you're still writing the book. Shannon, what's your literary community like? Where do you find these people? How do you connect with them? How did you get a good writing group? And Wendy, I'm going to ask you the same thing after Shannon.
Sure. So I basically found my writing group originally through Binders, which if people who don't know, it's Binders full of women, started on Facebook what were you saying? Like, was it 12 years ago? Yeah.
About 12 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you know, gender non-conforming, non-binary, basically anyone who's not a cis male. And it's thousands and thousands of people. So I basically, that helped my career tremendously because everyone is helping each other, you know, without, it's all just, you know, goodwill, helping each other. So a lot of my success actually has come from making those connections. And so I have like one good friend that I trade pages with, and I also, through making friends in that group, right now I have a critique group that's made up of, depending on who comes each time, it's like 4 to 8 people. And some of us have book deals, some of us already have a book out or doing a second one. And it's the most like, I didn't get an MFA, so this feels like my MFA, you know. So we basically submit, you know, up to 17 pages at a time of each person, you know, not everyone submitting.
Love that number, 17, very specific.
Yeah. Yeah. So we do, you know, critiques beforehand. Then on Zoom, we meet for 3 hours and do a round robin of all each other's work. And it's the most intensive critique thing I've ever been part of, but it's been tremendously helpful for my book. And it, you know, it's free because we're just there to help each other. So that's been my biggest support right now with working on my book. So.
Wendy, where have you found your writing community? How did you meet them?
Well, different ways. on social media, obviously, and I'll explain about that in a moment. But I'm a member of 3 writing groups in Scotland, all of whom are affiliated to the Scottish Association of Writers. I run 2 of them. I set up and run 2 of them. One of them is Angus Writers Circle, which is an amazing group in Angus in Scotland, which is near me. I'm in Dundee. And then I've set up 2 online groups, one called City Writers and one called History Writers. And so those 3 groups have a core group of people who will critique, who will help you out. But we also have talks. We meet physically for one of them. We meet online for the other 2. We have speakers, and all of that helps us to develop as writers. So you've always got a ready group of people who you can start out with. When I first started out as a writer, I joined Facebook group for writers. Now, we all know that some Facebook groups are better than others. It's a bit like Animal Farm, you know. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And it's the same with Facebook groups. All Facebook groups are equal, but some are more equal than others. And I joined one called Books Go Social, and it was about it's run by a company that promote your books, but they ran a very good group, and I was invited to speak at their conference. So I spoke at Dublin Writers' Conference 5 years in a row. I was obviously very good because they kept inviting me back, which led to me speaking at conferences in the States, speaking at online conferences around the world during COVID. So I meet a lot of people, networking. I network everywhere. People always say to me, Wendy, you're everywhere. And I am. I seriously am. I have a habit of saying yes to everything. So if somebody says, Wendy, you know, will you come to Outer Mongolia and do a talk? I'll go, oh, yes. Or Wendy,
take
will
me
you
with you? Take me with you. I've never been to Mongolia. Yeah,
you and I are going to Outer Mongolia. Let's do it. It has to be done. So I believe in supporting others. And as I said before, so you meet these people as you network, as you go places, because they will introduce you. Now, we'll talk very briefly about, if you don't mind, about the Facebook group that I didn't set up, although I inherited. There was a Facebook group called Women Writers, Editors, Agents, and Publishers.
And we're going to drop that link in the chat as well.
Yeah.
And we'll also have it in the follow-up email. Keep going, Wendy.
It had been running for 14 years, and I was asked to take it over 15 months ago because whoever was running it had to give it up. So it was either that or we're going to close it. So I said, yes, I'll take it on. It has grown in the last 15 months from 6,000 members to 77,000 members as I came on here today. I checked. So it's grown by 65,000 members. It's massive. It's growing between 2,000 and 2,700 members a week.
Wow.
And it's so active. It is such an active group. So that, and people go, oh, but how many of those people are active? Again, I checked the statistics before I came on. It has 59,000 active users as of today. 59,000. That's a lot of people. Now, I'm obviously front and foremost at that every single day, but I run it kind of like military precision. I was in the military. I was in
I never would have guessed, Wendy. I never would have guessed.
I was in the Royal Navy for 6 years, in the Army for 17 years. I was a nursing officer, so I'm a major. So I'm Major Wendy H. Jones. So I run it still like I'm still running a military unit, you know, in a nice way before you all think it's regimented. You know,
I got to tell you, I'm in that group, and I actually really, really appreciate that Wendy is, and Wendy, I say this with great respect, a total hard ass when it comes to like no self-promotion, no spamming each other in DMs. It is a group to share information with. And Wendy, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit more about that, but I also want to let you guys know. So we've got this giant group that Wendy has. We also have the main binder, which is called The Binders, which is another giant group. But there are also many smaller binders groups on Facebook, and I mean smaller other writers groups as well. For example, I'm in binders full of memoirists. I'm in binders building platforms. I'm in binders writing young adult fiction. Somebody did ask in the chat, I think it was Nicole, but forgive me if I've got your name wrong. Someone did ask, so how the heck do I join these binders? And I want to let you know that many of them are private groups, but if you want to, you can find me on Facebook. I'm the only Allison K. Williams on Facebook. Friend me, but then also leave me a message, because I administer like 6 groups and I lose track if I don't get that message, but I'll add you to anything that seems relevant to you. You can leave whatever group doesn't work for you, and you can unfriend me afterwards, and I'm not going to be hurt if you like to keep your timeline sleek. Wendy, how would we join your Facebook group?
You just apply to join by going to, if you go on Facebook and search for women writers, editors, agents, and publishers. I know it's a long name. I didn't make it up. That's what I inherited. And I approve it. Everything has to be approved in the group. So posts have to be approved. Membership has to be approved. The only thing that isn't approved is comments. But if there are any comments that are way out of line, I don't let people be rude. Anybody that starts being rude, they get one chance, and then if they're still rude again, we boot them out. But if there's a comment that's rude, somebody usually reports it to me within minutes, so it's gone. Because the people in the group are lovely. Now, taking me out of it, the people in the group are amazing, and I mean amazing, amazing, amazing. And they do so much to keep that group running. They advise people every day. They take time out. They give feedback on first lines. They support people. And somebody, even today, Alison, was recommending your book, your editing book. And nice. I said, it's an absolutely phenomenal book. I commented saying it's an absolutely phenomenal book. And people will do that for you. And I don't mind. I mean, if somebody just starts, promoting their own friends' books, then it's not what it's for. Yeah. I just know.
Yeah.
But and I wanted talking about editing. Yeah.
I want to jump in here too. I'm going to slightly redirect us, because we do have a totally valid question from Jennifer. Jennifer is not on Facebook. It just doesn't do it for her. It's not good for her mental health. So Jennifer, specifically, the Craft Talks webinar series has a Discord server, which is like those old-fashioned chat forums that we all used when we first logged onto the internet, and our phone made that weird squeaking sound while we logged on. And then every time our mom got a phone call, it kicked us off the internet. So there is a Discord server for Craft Talks, and you can get to that. And then Mona has also added the Creative Academy for Writers. And Mona, if you've got a link to that, go ahead and drop that in as well. Shannon, I have 2 questions for you. One is, these classes that you took, were they expensive? Like, were they massively expensive? And then we also have a really great question from Leslie, which is, how do you vet the people in your writing group to make sure it's a quality group that's serving you in the way you need?
Right. To answer your first question, the classes were very cheap. One was, I think, $300, and that was for, I believe, like 6 or 8 sessions. And then another one was $200. That was the one that met in person. So it very, I was not spending thousands of dollars. It was, it's still a lot for me, but it was, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And I mean, somebody pointed out in the chat, thank you, the Craft Talks webinar series. If you get on early bird, it's $15 a webinar. And we have, all kinds of aspects of craft. Jane Friedman offers a lot of great webinars. They're all only $25. Shannon, I know how I formed my writing group, and I'll volunteer that too, but how did you form your writing group? And Wendy has also put her email in there about if anyone would like to join City Writers, which is her online writing group. Email her at wendy@wendyhjones.com. Shannon, back to you. How did you find those writers? How did you make sure that they were not wasting your time writing weird pornography, giving you terrible racist feedback, or giving you terrible writing feedback?
Right.
How did you get good people?
So actually, I was very fortunate, and I was invited into this already established group because someone had left. So, and I just, in being invited, I got the little bios or links to the websites of the people who were in the group, and saw that many of them had, been published already or had good bylines. I felt very fortunate to get in that group. And I will say that the person who invited me is also the person who connected me with her agent that then became my agent. So it's just people, people helping each other, and I help other people as well. So, and can I say one other thing about that? So actually I became friends with that woman because I was in a Instagram pod. So first, Allison, it was a pod that you formed and put people in, and I was one of those people. Then we made an offshoot pod. I don't remember if the person was in the original or just the offshoot.
I think there was somebody in the original, and I hooked you guys up with a few more people because we were having a problem where our pods were not diverse enough, and writers of diverse backgrounds were not getting the support they needed. And I was really appreciative that Shannon and a few other writers were like, we really need a more diverse pod. Can you make that happen? Can we make that happen? And I gave what I could, and then they made it happen from there. You gotta ask for what you need. Shannon, anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, so it was just, we were in this pod, and then she was aware of me as a writer, and then had also connected I think 9 other people with her agent, and that hadn't worked out, but he liked my book, so it worked out. And and so I mean, I could just keep talking and talking about
So I'll ask Wendy then. Wendy, how do you find a group that gives you the quality of feedback that you're looking for?
Well, in Scotland, it's a bit easier because we can join the Scottish Association. Well, you don't join the Scottish Association of Writers. You go there and you find a group that's near you. And you can just go and find it and see what it's like. And if it's not for you, you don't have to stay, because they're not expensive groups. But you will get talks at them and things. So we're quite lucky in Scotland that we're small enough that there's a network of people already there. And you just find a group that suits you and meets your temperament, really. So that's how I did it to start with. And then you can find groups again through social media. I know not everybody's on Facebook, but again, coming to things like this, people are hearing about groups. So when you attend this sort of thing, we're talking about groups, and people might join My City Writers and go, oh yeah, I really like it. Or people could go, and this is not for me at all. We're not offended, because everybody's different and everybody likes things differently. We do have members from all over the world, so it's not just a Scottish group. It just happens to be run in Scottish time, but it's a time when Americans and that can join us. So
I also know that the national novel writing website, NaNoWriMo, that a lot of you guys participate in, also has forums that are specific to different parts of the world. And some of those people host year-round things as well as things that are specific to NaNoWriMo. There are a ton of great resources popping up in the chat, and we do send the chat transcript out with the replay, or if you're watching the replay, it's in that link right there. So please feel free to leaf through there as well. Wendy, it sounds like you have more. I totally cut you off there.
No worries. Because obviously it can't be Scotland I focus on, because you guys, most of you are in America, but another good one, I mean, NaNoWriMo is excellent, but if you write crime fiction or you're interested in writing crime fiction, you can join Sisters in Crime. Now, you don't have to be a woman to join that. Originally, it was set up just for women, but now they accept anyone, But Sisters in Crime is amazing because they, again, have chapters all over America and in Canada, and they've now got one in the UK as well. So I'm a member of I joined long before they opened up the UK one, because I'll join anything. Join it.
And we're also seeing in the chat, many states have writers associations. There's Florida. Rebecca's posted North Carolina writers. Marie has pointed out that the New York Public Library and many other public libraries also have both free online communities and free in-person communities. I want to get slightly more granular here because I recently, well, in the past year, switched from a writing group that was not doing for me what I needed it to do. I found that I was not at the same level of critique as the other people in the group. So I was not being as helpful to them as I could be. And I was not getting stuff from them that was helping me. They were real nice people. And I was really glad when the woman who organized it left the country and moved somewhere else so that it just kind of fell apart on its own. And I didn't have to be sorry, I don't want to be in this group anymore. Because I was like, I don't feel right just leaving since my friend started it. But then I thought to myself, okay, I need another group. What do I need? And so I contacted 3 other writers who I knew I respected their critique. I had critiqued for them before. They had critiqued for me before as individuals, although they didn't all know each other. And I said, here's what we're going to do. Do you want to do it? We're going to meet once a month on Zoom, 20 pages and no written feedback. We're only going to talk about each other's work because we all work as editors as well. And giving all this written feedback feels too much like work. And that's really served me well. And I'll say too, one of the things that's really helpful about a writing group that meets regularly, no matter what kind of group you're in, online, offline, free, paid, whatever, having to show up with pages for other people who are depending on you makes you turn out those pages because you got to have something to bring to the group. So let me ask then, Shannon, you also were able to get funded for your writing time. How did you get paid to write?
Yeah, so I got my book deal and it had a very small advance. And so I wasn't really able to use that for writing time. And originally my deadline was going to be super tight. It's now been extended, but originally it was going to be super tight. And I work as a freelancer, so if I take time off, then I don't get paid. So I actually did do a GoFundMe, and I got like $3,000. Just it was like from friends and family, and that was allowed me to take off, you know, some time from my freelance work to be able to work on the draft. So it was really important to me. I know it, you know, it varies by person what they're comfortable with. It was really important to me not to do that until I had the book deal, as opposed to having people help me, you know, have time to work on it before, you know, before I had a deal. But that was very invaluable to me. Yeah.
Wendy, how do you get paid to write? Writing's your full-time job. You have also your magazine, your groups, your associations. How do you boil it all down to a writer is your main job, and how do you pay your rent with it?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I don't have to pay any rent because I've bought a house and I've not gotten a mortgage. So that puts me in
you're
a
a member of the
position.
Bourgeoisie, Wendy.
But I still do have to pay my gas and electricity, and I'm rather fond of eating. I'm one of those strange people that like to eat. So I'm a full-time writer. I support myself from that. But I was very fortunate. I applied to the society. Just to explain, to put this into context, I'm currently writing a historical fiction series based on the life of a true gentleman called Thomas Graham, who came from Scotland, and he was 19th century naval surgeon. And I've been asked to write a series of books about him. And the chat went all over the world. So I got a grant from the Society of Authors to go to Antigua and do research on. And I managed to go to Antigua for 2 weeks and swan around in Antigua doing research, and it was lovely. I got a grant from the Society of Authors to do that.
And so you had to apply, you had to write up something about your project, you had to make sure that you were in line. And if you guys search grants plus Arts Council plus the name of your state or province or whatever they call the Arts Council in your country, chances are good there are some grants that you don't know about that you qualify for. There is specific funds of tax dollars that are meant to help people make art, and we still have some of those. Wendy, anything else you want to add there?
Well, yeah, I want to say what you're saying, that there are funds out there. And if you're a member of Sisters in Crime, if anybody is, if you're from America, even though members from all over the world can join, it must be a charity thing. You can apply for funds from them as well, to support your writing. So there are loads of funds out there. Look them up, guys, and apply for them. So let's face it, what can they say? No. They might say yes, which I was shocked when they said yes to me, the Society of Authors, because quite frankly, I thought they were going to say, Wendy, you just want a fortnight on a beach. And why would we support that? No, they gave me the money. So
yeah.
Work.
And usually if you're applying for grants, if you're applying for residencies, there's going to be a lot of information that is kind of a hassle to write the first time, but then you can copy paste it and update it every time after that. I want to drop in here a residency that I specifically recommend. It's called the Atlantic Center for the Arts. It's in Florida, south of Daytona Beach. It is a beautiful residency. It's $700 for 3 weeks, and they provide all your food and your lodging, and you study with a noted teacher. I've been there several times. I studied with Danny Shapiro there. I studied with Rick Moody there. They've got a really nice set of diversity there in terms of both the teachers and the students. So you're going to find people who empathize with what you're doing. And each time the admissions process is a little bit different because the teachers pick their own students. They also have an excellent scholarship program. The first time I went there, I was broke. I said, I can barely afford my plane ticket to get there. And they gave me a free ride. I didn't have to pay anything beyond my $25 application fee. It's called Atlantic Center for the Arts. And now I believe after COVID, they waived application fees as well, but they were passing out scholarships right, left, and center. And if you can afford it, $700 is pretty reasonable for a 3-week residency with a high profile teacher. We have a question that came in from Kelly, and Wendy and Shannon, it is entirely up to you how much you are comfortable answering this, but what is the range of money you can get from a book advance?
Okay, so the range you can get is $0 to in the 6 figures. So it varies a great deal. I read somewhere that the average is $10,000. And just so people know, it is that number is significantly lower for people of color, which is horrible. So there's not a level playing field. Yeah, there's just, yeah. So, yeah.
Wendy, what are you seeing in terms of advances?
Again, it's the advances are going down and down and down and down, and that's in the UK, and that is well recorded. It's anything from 0. The odd person might get 6 figures, but that's unusual. 7 figures, but that's really unusual. The average now in the UK, and I heard this from an agent recently, is £200. So that's about $250. Yeah, that's the average in the UK now, if you get anything. I mean, book deals are going down. They really are, because you've got to make it back, and the publishers need to be sure that they're going to get it back. Obviously, the big name authors are going to get more than that, but if you're an unknown, if you get £200, apparently that's a good deal.
Yeah. The best deal I've heard of recently, Leah Bardugo, who wrote 6 of Crows, contracted to write an additional 10 fantasy novels that are a crossover between YA and adult over the next, I think it's 8 years. And that was a deal in 7 figures. She made more than $1 million for that. And I think it was a couple of $1 million. But it's because 6 of Crows was an enormous, huge hit in the YA space. And her other books were also selling strong. I will lay it right out on the table for you, because I think we have to talk about money when we can. I got $500 for 7 drafts, and I used the vast majority of that plus some more to pay a copy editor, because I felt like I needed a stronger copy edit than I was getting. And I wanted somebody, I mean, the book is about editing. It has to be as good as we can possibly get it, However, it means I'm getting royalty checks a little bit faster than I might otherwise, because my advance has already, what they say, earned out. The book made enough money for the publisher to cover that $500. And so now they are actually paying me. On the other end of the scale, I have a client who wrote a first novel that got a six-figure deal. And she was like the Cinderella story. She got an agent fast. She got a publisher fast. She got a really good deal. But it's 6 years later and she's having a really hard time selling the second book. So a great advance is not always a guarantee of future success. Mm-hmm. Shannon, do you want to add anything on there?
I will say mine was 8,500, which I've received half of that so far, because I received the second half, once we're done with the editing. So yeah, I mostly use that to buy glasses and get a crown on my tooth, So,
America.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wendy, do you want to add anything else?
As we're being honest, I'll say that I didn't get an advance. However, I get really good royalties. My royalties are high. So it made up for it in that way. Plus, we get free glasses and free teeth in the UK. So
nice.
We don't get free glasses. We get free eye tests. We have to pay for our glasses, but we get pretty much almost free. And we get free healthcare. So, I'm okay. I don't have to spend my advance any money I make on healthcare because I get it for nothing.
Nice.
So Lynn asks us a great question in the chat. Can we talk a little bit about marketing? And I'm going to reference back to that making deposits in the Bank of Goodwill, where your marketing starts by connecting with your literary community while you're still writing the book. Shannon, what have you found and also folks, there is a difference between marketing and publicity. So marketing is what you pay for because you're asking them to give you something of value. Publicity is what you get because you're interesting, but you still have to let people know that you're interesting. So publicity is free, marketing is paid for. That's the difference between PR and marketing. Shannon and Wendy, what would you say that you can do to market your book that does not cost you a ton of money or even any money?
I know. So I haven't, because my book isn't out yet. I haven't done a lot of market. I haven't paid for anything. And I haven't done as much as I should too. But I know that people have success with TikTok. Just making TikTok videos that align with what they're talking about in their book. You can get a lot of followers that way. And also on TikTok, there's, oh shoot, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. Book Talk. There's something called Book Talk that's really popular. So if you can get in there, that can also help your book.
And I want to briefly explain, because it puzzled the heck out of me as a brand new TikTok user. Book Talk is not a group or a location like it is on Facebook. It is the name for a collection of people who talk about books who may or may not be connected to each other. So you just got to look for Book Talk and see what pops up. Wendy, what would you advise for cheap or low cost marketing and publicity?
Well, in terms of marketing, which is what you pay for, if you look at Books Go Social, they've got a lot of different things that you can do. You can also pay for newsletters like the Fussy Librarian, or you may pay, I have to say things in pounds because I pay in pounds, yeah, but you may pay £36, which is about $50 or something, to actually put it out in their newsletter, but you will get a lot of sales from it. And I usually make my money back and more. And then the read-through rate is when they get your first book and how many other books they read in your series. My read-through rate is high. So you pay the 30, you might make, I don't know, £150, say, out of doing it. But then you'll make more money out of the read-through from the rest of your series. So these newsletters are good. If you want to pay a bit more, I would really recommend Kerry Barnum of New Shelves Books. Now, she's not cheap, but what she is very, very good. So if you do have some spare money, and you can chat to her for not that much money, and you will get some really good ideas. In terms of promotion, which is free, it's be everywhere. and just talk about books naturally. Do things in a natural way. I'm everywhere, including TikTok. I embrace TikTok. And what I did when I was in things like when I was in Antigua, because I was staying in, I'm gluten-free because I've got celiac. So the only place in Antigua I could stay was an all-inclusive hotel, which meant you got free alcohol and free cocktails with it. So I went up to the bar with my book at the color on my phone because I didn't have any books with me. And I said, this is the cover of my book, red. I want a cocktail made the color of that book. So they did it. And then I called the cocktail after the book. And I put TikToks of the cocktail and talked about my book and said, so this is Killer's Countdown. And they did it for every single book. Now, some of the cocktails tasted like paint strippers, so they went down the sink. But because we were more interested in the color than the, but it's being original. Do talk about your books, but do it in a different way, guys. Because if you just go on somewhere and you go, buy my book, nobody's going to buy it because they're fed up. But if you do it in a different way, you know, completely. So one of the things I do is I will do today's writing comes to you from, and I managed to, honest to goodness, I could speak my way into anything. Okay. I can convince people they let me do things you're not allowed to do. So I've sat and written at various desks of people that they've got cord round them, so you're not even allowed to go in, and they just lift the cord up, let me go through. I write on my laptop there and I say today's writing comes to you from, and I talk about what I'm writing, and then I'll say, you know, I'm writing my new book. That's a good way. And people have talked about podcasts. Yes, podcasts are a brilliant way. Go on people's podcasts. I run a podcast. If anybody would like to pitch a topic to me for my podcast, which is the Writing and Marketing Show, same email address, wendy@wendyhjones.com, you might be able to get on the podcast. Start your own podcast. I did a 3-year stint on a radio show and did Wendy's Book Buzz, where I could talk about my books every single week, but I did it by interviewing other authors. Think outside the box, guys. I could talk about this all day, so I won't, because Alison will be going, Wendy, this is not the Wendy show. So I was talking there.
But the Wendy show is pretty good. I love the Wendy podcast. She just had a great episode with a woman who she met who's a digital nomad who was working in a hostel in Israel and also marketing her books. One of the things to really think about with podcasts is start listening to them now so that you know who you want to pitch later. So about once a month, I check in with the top podcast lists on my podcast app and I see what has writing in it, or I Google writing podcast and I see what pops up that's popular. Download one episode, listen to it, see if I like it enough to listen to another one, and then think about, well, what could I pitch that's specific to their podcast? Because more than anything, I wrote a book is not news. Hometown Girl wrote a book is news. Or I wrote a book that addresses the problems of the senior citizens who listen to your podcast is news. You've got to think about what is the angle that is useful to the venue that you would like to be in. Shannon, what do you do to market, and dive in there?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add one thing, as I know a couple of people who have gotten their book cover made on earrings. So, and it's a really inexpensive, it's like paper or cardboard. So it's really cheap, but then people will stop you because you're wearing books on your ears, and then you can tell them about your book. So I've heard that that's actually a really, that's a really useful way to talk about your book. And then what have I done? I haven't done as much as I should. I have a website. And I actually just revamped my website and changed it from WordPress to oh my gosh, WordPress to sorry, I'm blanking. An easier one.
Squarespace?
Squarespace, yes, thank you. Squarespace. So, and then I also just started a Substack. So, so that essentially is a kind of like blogging platform for writers. And then you can also do like paid, subscriptions where you get more content, and it's actually for podcasters as well. So I just started mine, so it's very bare right now, but I'm planning to add content to that. And then that's also a way for people to follow me, so that when my book does come out, then I'll already have like this list of people that follows me on Substack. Because without that, if I say, oh, my book's coming in 2 years, like how are they gonna, remember me 2 years from now? So
yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. So in just a moment, we are going to ask you guys for your biggest takeaway for what a writer can do right now to move their book closer to readers without it costing any money. I also want to say we'll have another episode of The Writer's Bridge coming up next month at the end of September. Let us know if there is anything you are specifically interested in hearing us talk about. We would love to hear what you want to know. Please feel free to forward the replay to a writer friend. This is free. It is free to everybody. You can share it with as many people as you like. We will also share the chat, and lots of people are putting their topics and their information and their Substacks and their social into the chat, so you'll be able to access that whole chat as well. And I also want to say too, that when we're talking about marketing, I've got a webinar coming up for Jane Friedman on the 21st of September. The webinar is $25. It's called Writer Mind, Marketing Mind. And one of the backup documents for it is a marketing Excel or Google sheet where you plug in the type of marketing you would like to do. Like, I want to be on Twitter, I want to be on TikTok, whatever. I want to be on podcasts, I want to teach classes, and your book going out date, or you put a date in there if you don't have a book scheduled for publication yet. And then it spits you out a calendar of what to do and when in the lead up to launching your book. So that'll be part of my Jane Friedman webinar on September 21st, Writer Mind, Marketing Mind. Wendy, what can our audience do today to get their book into the world, to move their book forward, to revise or edit or publish their book that is free and that you think they should do?
Network. Just absolutely network with everybody. Network with readers, network with authors, and just get your name out there and known, so that when people are looking for things, they remember your name. And one of the things I do, I have to say, is I always make people laugh. Making people laugh, they'll remember you. And I always start by saying, remember, I am Wendy H. Jones. That H is the most important H in the history of the world, because if you look me up without it, you'll get some woman who wrote The Sex Lives of English Women. I know nothing about the sex lives of English women, so I am not that woman. So Wendy H. Jones, and that always makes people laugh and they remember my name.
I love that. I love that. Shannon, what's your number one takeaway for today?
So there is one thing that I wanted to add as well, is that if you live in a town that has writers' conferences, some writers' conferences will let you volunteer for the conference, and then you can attend to that conference free of charge. So I did that a couple times with binders conferences in LA, and those were really invaluable experiences for me. And I connected with people through there that I still am close with. And they also, if you do have a book that you're trying to, find an agent for, like, they'll have agents there that you can set up times to meet with those agents. So that's definitely something that I would suggest.
I love it. And Yaling points out in the chat, networking is exhausting for introverts. And I want to remind all of you who are introverts, one of the greatest things you can do is use a little stopwatch. Get yourself on whatever social media you genuinely enjoy, set a timer for 10 minutes, and tell as many people congratulations or here's a helpful tip as you possibly can, just to get your name connected to other people. In the long run, nobody wants to be your customer. They want to be your friend. And the more you can share with them, this is the topic I care about, and this is how it's going to help you. This is the book I have written that emphasizes the topic I care about, and this is why it will entertain or enlighten or gladden your life in some way. Think about the readers. Think about the places you want to appear, whether that's newspapers, podcasts, your local bookstore, a very quiet gathering of introverts where you softly whisper about your books together in a dark room, cocooned in pressure blankets. Whatever it is, think about how you can specifically reach out to those people and those groups with something that makes their life better, not just promote my book or edit my book or help my book, but hey, I understand you're practicing developmental editing and I would love to give you a big old testimonial. Can you do a pass on my first 5 chapters? Keep making those deposits in the bank of goodwill. We will drop Shannon's and Wendy's links for their Substacks and their courses and their classes and everything in the replay email. Shannon and Wendy, thank you so much for being here today. Shannon's book is coming out in 2025, so get on her Substack because that's how you're going to find out when it actually comes up. Wendy has books out there right now and her brand new free writers magazine. Please get onto her website as well and find those things. Thank you all so much for being here, and please feel free to unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye. Thanks for being here.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. That was excellent.
Bye.
Thank you. Really good. Thank you. This was great.